What is up, everybody? It's your boy Mike Mills back with another video. Today, I want to talk about how I was able to save my first $40,000 when I was 23. When I very first got the job, like I literally went from zero, like maybe $1,000 in the bank, to 40, about 41 in a span of about 9 months. And this is kind of how I did it. Obviously, like all of you know, I am a merchant mariner, and that was my first time being on a ship. It was 2015 at the time. It was I think I was like 20. Yeah, I was 23 years old. Like the only job I had prior to that was like Chick-fil-A or Farm Fresh, and I didn't really have any money. You know what I'm saying? So going to the ship or going when I finally got hired, it was like a relief. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally going to be able to not just afford things, but like being an adult or like pretty much make adult money. And it was just a crazy time because, like I said, I was still working at Farm Fresh. I don't even know if Farm Fresh exists anymore. I was working at Farm Fresh around the corner from my house, and there was like no other options for me. Yeah, I was thinking about going back to school for maybe like HVAC or something, but even then that was going to be like pressing it because I wasn't making anywhere near enough for me to be able to afford school, and I really wasn't. I just knew I needed to do something. And then and remember, I think I told y'all this before, when I first got hired, or around the time when I got hired, when I first started applying, um they came out with the all entry level position opening of like three times. I applied the first time, I did not get it. That was around, I think it was May. They opened it in May, and then I didn't get it. I got a letter saying I didn't get it. Then they opened it in June, and then I didn't get that time. They sent a letter saying I didn't get it that time, and then I was about to give up because I think I did it one more time because they opened up in July. Like they were just, I guess they were just really needing employees or whatever. And that third time, I also did not get it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Why can't I get this job? And then I kind of just, I didn't really forget about it, but I was just like, oh, whatever. And then out of nowhere, I just happened to look on the website again in, was it August? In August, I applied again. And then, yes, I had to apply all four times with a whole, not a new resume, but pretty much doing the whole process again. And then I didn't hear back, and I didn't get a letter saying I didn't get it in the amount of time I got with the other letters. So I was like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. Then around September, I think September-ish, October, I got a no, it was September. I got a letter in the mail saying, "Hey, you have a phone interview on this specific date. Make sure you're available." Blah blah blah. I was like, "Okay, cool, cool, cool." One of my friends that was working with me at Farm Fresh at the time, he had just got or he got the job maybe a year prior to me, and I was like, hit him up because he was applying at the same time as I was. I was hitting him up. I was like, "Yo, how did you get the job? How did the interview go?" And he was telling me everything, but it's like how I tell you guys, it's not so much, I can't really direct you on how to interview properly. I don't even think they really do interviews anymore, as far as I'm concerned, because they're so pressed for people. I don't even think they do interviews like they used to. So, but back then you had to do an interview, and then they had to like select you. So I remember finally getting the interview, talking to them. I talked to them about how I did, well, not really military school, like boot camp and all that stuff. And then I finally got the job. Or they said, okay, cool, cool, cool. And then they didn't say nothing to me, said from, I think it was like October to, yeah, to November, like mid-November, I got something back saying, hey, you need to go do a drug test. And they sent me to go do my drug test. And then after that, once I passed, obviously I was going to pass. And then I was like, okay, we're good to go. And then a couple months later, I was on my first ship in March. This is where we're starting at. I told you all that to show you where we started at. And mind you, at that time, I didn't really have any money. I think I had like, because you get paid while they're putting you through training. So with the money I had from training and all that stuff, I had a total of maybe $2,000 in the bank when I got on my first ship. And So that's where we're gonna start out now. Yeah. So from March all the way to December, I knew I was gonna do. At first, I thought I was only gonna do 6 months. You know what I'm saying? I got on the ship March. It's either first or third, one of the two. I'm not sure. I think it was March 3rd because I remember it was my brother's birthday had already passed, so it had to been the third. Um, I remember getting on the ship with like literally $2,000 in the bank, and I was like, "Oh man, I can't wait to start making money." And then so I'm brand new to the ship. This is already after all the training, so I'm brand new to the ship and all this stuff. And then I get on the ship, I start working, and then I'm not thinking nothing of it. I'm just like, okay, I know I'm gonna be making money finally, so let me start working. So when they sent me to the ship, it was mid pay period. So the first paycheck was like, I mean, I don't want to say it was nothing, but it was essentially like maybe a few $100s because I hadn't really been working. So a few $100s, I was like, oh man, this is. But it was still more than I have ever made. You know what I'm saying? I ever made in my life, which is barely working. I think I had like 3 days on the paycheck. Obviously, outside of the stuff that you get from when you're in the hall. You know what I'm saying? Or the pool was pretty much where you wait to get your job. And then so I had like 3 days of actually working. So I looked at the pay, like, nah, it's whatever. And then finally, when I got the second one, that's when I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is like money, but it wasn't like crazy money. Mind you, when you first get hired, you're thinking, oh, I'm about to be making crazy money, buku money, this and that. But it really wasn't crazy. You know what I'm saying? But it was still more than I ever made. So I was like, okay, cool. And then I knew I was like, I'm going to save every single thing that I make. I don't care. I'm saving everything. So, and for the most part, the ship was in port. Like we stayed in Sasebo, Japan for the most part. So let's say the first month or two, I think the first month I was able to save because I got on the ship March 3rd. So that first month I was able to save like $4,000 off the rip. I think just under 4,000. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, okay, cool. This is again, it wasn't a crazy amount of money in the bank, but I was like, okay, cool. And then as time went on and we started doing more things as far as the ship, so it was more overtime and stuff like that. I remember when I hit my first $10,000 in the bank, and mind you, that's more than I've ever made ever in my life. You know what I'm saying? And we would be in port, but we was out to sea a lot also. You know what I'm saying? But it wasn't not a lot. We was out to sea. Okay, let's say in half because we was doing operations, but we wasn't doing a lot at the time. It wasn't until like I was on the ship like the third or fourth month when we started hitting Australia and stuff like that. Then when I looked at my account, I was like, okay, cool. This is pretty good. But I didn't feel it until I really hit my first, I think I didn't notice it until looked at my account and I saw about $11,000 in the bank. And mind you, I know the 11,000 isn't a lot, but at the time to me, I was like, yo, this is crazy. And the really what I was doing whenever I would go out to sea or whenever we would be in port, I would pull out a specific amount of cash and I'm like, all right, this is only cash I'm pulling out for the whole time I'm going to be in port. So if we're in port for about 3 days, I may, and mind you, also we was in Japan and everything. A lot of people like Japan's really expensive, but if you're just going out for like food and drinks, it's really not that expensive. For me, wasn't that expensive. And I also had friends that we would all help pay for each other and stuff like that. And then so I really wasn't spending that much money because we would be in port for like a couple days, but then we'd be out to sea for a couple weeks. So it was pretty easy for me to like accumulate money. And even when I was like, okay, I'm a splurge. And for me back then, splurging was maybe like I spent $300. You know what I'm saying? So I really was saving almost everything that I was making. And mind you, the 300 that was like more than that would have been like the very most I've ever spent because I didn't have a credit card at the time. I only had a debit card. And then at the time, I used to be scared to use my debit card. So I'd only go to the ATM and pull cash out. So if I ran out of money, I'll be like, all right, it's time for me to go home. So that's how I did it. It just became like easier and easier to save. And then obviously as time goes by, we're out to see a little bit longer. I was able, so every paycheck, I'll just keep it. You know what I'm saying? I did have a student loan, but that was only like, by the time I got to the ship, I only had about $4,000, maybe three. I think it was like just under $4,000 I had to pay back in student loan debt. And I was still paying it like the whole time I was out. And then so there was that. And then I was still like, so there wasn't anything I really had to pay. It was a student loan and my car insurance and my phone bill. And all that, let's say 50, 80. So all that was like maybe $300 that I knew I had to spend every month. And then plus whatever. And then obviously including the stuff that I was doing when I was going out. So I really, at most, every month, I would spend at very most, outside of my, well, plus my bills, like $500-600 at most. You know what I'm saying? And mind you, this was back then. I didn't have any of my houses. I didn't have anything. Those were the only bills that I had. So obviously, I'm making this kind of money, and I didn't have to spend that much. It was easier for me to save. And then I know which a lot of you were thinking, like by the time I hit like 20, like when I hit about 20 something grand in the bank, and mind you, this 20 grand, no debt, nothing. I'm just looking at my account, I'm like, oh my God, this is the most I've ever had. And it felt like such a short amount of time that I got it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. You know what I'm saying? And knew I was supposed to only stay on the ship 6 months. I was only gonna, or July, until July. So from March to July, which I don't even think that was 6 months, like 4 months, March, April, May, June, July. So I was only planning on staying until July. But then something told me, I was like, nah, you know what? Stay on the ship. You know what I'm saying? Stay working. And mind you, this is 2015 also. But I was like, stay working, stay until December. So when I finally made that decision, that's when I was like, okay, yeah, let's save some money now. You know what I'm saying? So from around July to December, yeah, I still went out, but I ain't spending nothing for real, for real. And then, like I said, all the bills that I had, like my parents was taking care of it because I didn't have auto paying and stuff like that back then. So I would write a bunch of checks before I left the house, and then I'll give it to my dad, and he'll just mail the checks off like every month. You know what I'm saying? So with that plus everything else I was spending, I really wasn't spending that much money. And then by the time it really wasn't until I got home, or like my last month. Yeah, because I was talking to one of my friends. He's an older guy, like much older than me. I was talking to him, and then because me and him used to talk about like real estate and stuff like that. This is before I had any houses. My parents had some, and but I didn't have any. You know what I'm saying, at the time. And then I would talk to him all the time. We would literally sit for hours and just talk. And he would tell me like, "Hey, you're a smart kid. You know what I'm saying? You're pretty much doing it right. Blah blah blah. Save your money. This and that." And then I remember like one of the like my last month. I think it was like November-ish of 2015. So it was like my last month, last full month I was there. I remember saying like, we was talking, and I told him how much I was able to save. I told him I pretty much saved everything I made. You know what I'm saying? Because on average, then I was taking home like maybe 4 grand a month, you know what I'm saying, on average. And by the time I got home, so for 9 months I was on the ship, I had just, I think I had 40, but just under, yeah, I had 40 grand, you know what I'm saying, in the bank. He was like, oh, you saved pretty much everything, you know? And I was like, well, yeah, I didn't want to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, I didn't save everything, but for how much we was making, because some months I would make like 4,400, you know what I'm saying? Or some months I would make like only 4 grand or 3,800. So, but for it even out on average, it was around 4 grand a month. So, and that had to do with like overtime and the different kinds of overtime, and like some months we didn't do as much like operations, like when it came to like unreps or flight quarters and stuff like that. We didn't do much of that. And then other months we did that all the time, so my paychecks were obviously different at that point. So by the time I got home, or by the time you got to like that last month and we was talking, he was like, yo, you saved pretty much everything that you made. And I was like, yeah, it's just I knew what I wanted to do. and how much I wanted to save, pretty much earlier on, I calculated it like my third month, my second or third month, I knew I was like, okay, if I stay until this date, this is how much money I was going to save. And I was like, as long as nothing crazy happens or I don't make any crazy purchases, this is how much I was going to save. So literally stuck to that plan from literally, I think I made the plan in like mid April, maybe late April to literally December. I stuck to the plan because I put my date to get off the ship December 1st. I didn't get off until December 10th. So I was 10 days overdue. Nothing, that's not bad or anything, but I was 10 days overdue. And that had more so to do with the fact that we were still trucking it back to the States. And the amount of time it takes to get from the last port in on the West Coast, pretty much all the way till you get back to the States, was like from Guam to Hawaii, from Hawaii to whether it be San Diego or Washington, it's the same day. So from I knew they was gonna let me get off in Hawaii. I was already overdue at that point, but by the time we hit what is it, Washington, I literally got off like, if not that same day, the day after that. You know what I'm saying? But from that, for those 9 months, it was, I think, a total of $42,000. A total of 42. That's what like I said, not every month was the same. Some months I made more than the four. Months I made less than the four. So it kind of evened out. But yeah, that's how I saved $42,000. Like I said, this job, it's easy to save if you make a plan, but it's also very, very easy to blow your money because you feel like, oh, okay, I just made X amount. Mind you, and now the specific classerships I'm normally on, I make more than four. I can make close to like six, so it's it's really easy for you to be like, you know what? I'll make it back. I'm gonna blow this money. I want to buy this. How much this is gonna cost? $2,000. I'm gonna get it back in that paycheck. Oh, this is gonna cost me $1,000. I'm gonna get it back the next paycheck. It's very easy for you to get caught up in that. So for me, it felt like a real accomplishment. I mean, given yes, I didn't really have any bills, any like big bills, and I didn't have any debt at the time. But it from that felt like an accomplishment when I got home that I was able to save this much. But even then, when I got home, I was like, oh, there's not that much money. I didn't really think it was all that much money. Mind you, I didn't realize people didn't have that kind of money in the bank, especially not at the age I was. I was like 23. You know what I'm saying? People didn't have that kind of money in the bank. And then when it came to the following year, with how much money I had in the bank, I didn't. That's when it kind of hit me that I was like, oh, okay, maybe I do have some money. You know what I'm saying? That's when it's funny. I'm looking now when when I was going to the bank back then, like I would like, hey, can I would like to write a check or something like that, and then I mean, it seems a little messed up, but I was just gonna say is because I was young, not because of my race. But I would go to like the bank or whatever, and then I'd be like, "Hey, I want to pull out a certain amount of cash," and then I'll give them my debit card and my ID and all that stuff. And then this is when I got back to the States, when I got home, and then they would look at me like, "Oh, this is a kid. He's blah blah blah," or whatever. And then when I give them my name and everything, and they look me up, you can see the literal difference in face. And when they see the amount of money I have in the account, they would literally just like, oh, it would go from, can I have your bank or can I have your ID and whatever. And then when they pull up my account, they would literally like shift to like, oh, Mr. Mills, here you go. Can I see this? Can I see that? And at first I never really got hurt by it because I was like, okay, it's probably because I'm a kid. They didn't expect me from not I'm not a kid, but at the time I was like, I'm only 23, you know what I'm saying, 24. They don't expect me to have this kind of money in the bank. But then, like I said, as I got older, it still happens sometimes, but nowadays I do have money in the bank, but I'm doing a bunch of stuff, so I'm pulling money out all the time. So I'm bringing money in. I'm always going to bring money in, but I'm pulling money out as far as like, oh, I want to do this business. I want to do this business. Or just like, oh, I need to fix this in one of my houses. You know what I'm saying? So it's always in and out as far as cash. That's just how it is for me. And maybe someday it's gonna relax, but till right now, it's always in and out. I still always be able to save a certain amount of money. Like if you watched one of my previous videos, I told y'all how much I was able to save. But yeah, so that's pretty much how I was able to save $40,000 in 9 months at 23. I hope this helps. And again, if you want any help in becoming a merchant mariner, watch this video right here. And then if you really want a one-on-one consultation, I do do phone calls or voicemails, or not voicemail, video calls. But I do charge for that. But yeah, but if you do that, you can ask me any question you want. But the only thing I do require is you to watch this specific video. If you watch that, then I'll be like, okay, they're serious. Then I'll go ahead and help you. But yeah, I love you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Deuces. You're my people.